Hey, it's Robin, the Digital Ads Guy, and today we're going to go over how to configure conversions within Google Ads. Okay, so here we are in Google Ads, just at the main campaigns page. What we're going to do is we're going to click on goals, and that's going to take us to the summary page. We can see our existing goals here, and so I'm going to go over a couple different ways to configure conversions. The first is we're going to import a conversion from Google Analytics, and the second is we're going to create our own manual conversion. So first off, let's go through importing. So we're going to click on the Create a Conversion action button. We'll click on Import, select GA4 and a web property, and then what will happen here is any key events that you have configured within Google Analytics will automatically show up. If you don't see anything show up here, it means either you don't have any key events configured, or the key events have already been imported into Google Ads, or you've already imported the event into Google Ads and then you have removed it. So once you remove it, it can't be re-imported. So you actually have to go and bring that conversion back to life within Google Ads. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to bring in one of these key events called London purchases, import and continue, and then we're done. And that's really as easy as it is. So what we've got here now under our purchase category is two that existed before, what's called an LA purchase and a New York purchase. And here's the one we just imported, London purchases. Now, what we can do is if we click this conversion goal, we can now adjust its settings. So if we can see here what the name of the event is, if it's a primary action, what its value is, etc. So if you want to go into settings, just basically this is the event. The conversion name, this is something you may want to change. I like to, when I have imported events from GA4, I like to still note that they've been imported from GA4 in the name, even though it'll show in the column next to them. So in this case, maybe what we'll do is we'll just rename this to London Purchases GA4. We can specify whether we want it to be a primary action or a secondary action. Now, primary actions, primary conversion actions, are ones that Google ad campaigns can use to optimize for, whereas the secondary ones are not used to optimize for. They're just observed. So Google Ads will track how often secondary conversions happen, but they won't use it to optimize your campaigns. Whereas with primary conversions, they'll be tracked and they will be used to optimize your campaigns. That is to say, only when you are using a specific bid strategy like maximize conversions or maximize conversion value. So in our case, we'll leave it as primary. In terms of value, the default when you import something from GA4 is it's going to use the value that comes from GA4. So in other words, if it's a purchase and it's dynamic, it'll, if it's configured properly, it'll automatically pull in the value of that purchase. But you can provide a default value. So if there is no value pulled in, what do you want it to be? It can be whatever you want, 1, 10, 100, a million, whatever you like. I'll just leave it as that. And then basically, you can configure other things like, well, you can't configure the click-through window when it's been imported from GA4, but when you've got other conversions, you can assign, a value for attribution. Data-driven tends to be the one that is the smartest to use. It lets Google use its machine learning to sort of figure out, to give partial attribution. So if a click on a Google ad resulted in a purchase, but it was the fourth click in a series of clicks, Google will dynamically give it a proportion of that conversion. Not necessarily 25%, could give it 33% or 7%, but it uses its own machine learning to determine that. So the next one I want to go through is I want to go through adding a conversion but doing it manually. So same process to click a conversion action, create a conversion action. Now we're going to click on website, and the first thing we need to do is we have to enter a domain and scan it. This allows Google to go to your website and see if there are other conversion actions that it can automatically bring in. So what it's doing is, it's suggesting a couple of things for me in this case. If anyone visits the contact page, it'll track that as a conversion. Or if anyone visits the about page, it'll track that as a conversion. These are terrible suggestions. I don't want either of these. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to, manually configure a conversion. So the first thing we have to do is we have to decide what is the category for the conversion we're creating. Let's say, for example, I'll click Submit Lead Form because let's say that's going to be someone, they request a download to a white paper that I've got. So I will give it the conversion name of white paper download. And then under value, you can specify what do you want the value to be. In this case, we'll give it a value of 10. You can also not use a value if you want. Values are only important if you are going to use the bid strategy maximize conversion value with or without a target return on ad spend. It's still best practice to put a value in there because it allows you to move to that bid strategy if you want, but don't fuss too much over it at this point. The other important thing here is count. So for example, someone downloads a white paper. Do I want to count every time someone downloads a white paper? In other words, every time that form is submitted, or do I only want to count the unique submissions of that form? So in other words, if a single person goes to that form and they download the white paper 6 times, do I want to count it as 6 conversions or 1? You know, it's not a loaded question. It really depends on what the conversion is. In our case, because I only care if they download once, if they are sort of a download user, I'll select 1. But if it was a purchase, if every time they downloaded a white paper they paid $10, I would select every, right? And I would get $10. But in this case, it's just getting a free white paper, so I'll click on 1. And then you've got different click-through windows that you can select, engaged view window. I'm not going to go through this kind of stuff right now, but it all kind of has to do with how long, when they make that initial click on a Google ad to the time that they actually download the white paper. Sometimes it's not instant. They don't do it on that same visit. They could come back days later. And so Google wants to know, how long should I consider that to have come from the Google ad click? Is it 3 days? Is it 30 days? What do you want? So I tend to leave those as defaults, but you can play around with that. And then enhanced conversions here, just if you're going to try to track any other data for the user, like their contact information. I'll click on done. You'll see here, now we've got this manual conversion action that we've added. At any rate, I'll save and continue my manual conversion. So now at this point, the conversion's been created, but you have to set it up. You have to configure it. So in our case, there's a couple different ways to do it. There's an event snippet that you can use. So for example, when a page is loaded, like the confirmation page, you can have this script automatically show on that page, and anytime that page is loaded, the script will fire and tell Google Ads this conversion has happened. But I find that Google Tag Manager, I use that whenever I can. It's a very robust system. In this case, we get a conversion ID and a conversion label for this particular conversion that we've created. You'll use that conversion ID and conversion label inside of Tag Manager. That'll be the tag, and then you'll have a trigger that fires when that download happens. So again, not going through that in this video, but you may need this information. So done. Now, what we have, and I'll find it here, is white paper download. Okay, so it's been put in the submit lead form category for conversions, and here it is. It shows whether or not it's a primary conversion action that we went through before. Is Google going to optimize our campaigns for it or not? What the source is, so website, it's a manual conversion, whereas here are some other ones that, this is the one we just did, which is imported from GA4, so you can see that's its source. One thing I want to do is I want to show you how to change categorizations, because sometimes, if we bring in a conversion and say, we created this white paper download, but we specified what category we wanted it to be. If we import from GA4, Google will put it in the category it thinks is best. This was the one we did, London purchases, and it assigned it to the purchase category. But let's say, well, for whatever reason, that's not actually a purchase. If you click on the 3 dots, you can change it to another conversion category. They're calling it a conversion goal. It's a category. Let's say in this case, it's not actually a purchase, but it's a subscription. If you just click on that, you'll get a confirmation window saying that you're moving it to a different section. Hit save, and then what's going to happen here is that you can see now it's been removed from the purchase section. And if we go down to, where did we go? Oh, subscribe, right. It's now been moved here under subscribe. So we'll actually change that back. We'll move it back to purchase. But that's how you move the conversion goals around from group to group. The other thing that you may not want to forget is phone calls, because Google Ads has the ability to track phone calls as conversions in a couple of different ways. The first is if you use a call extension, or sorry, a call asset with your ad. If someone's on a mobile phone and they tap that number, they're actually going to get a Google number and they're going to call it, and it's going to go to the number you specified. But Google's going to be able to sort of listen in on that conversation. They're going to be able to record it if you so choose, and they're going to be able to tell how long that call lasts. If that call lasts a certain amount of time that you get to specify, then you can track it as a conversion. Typically that's 30 seconds, 60 seconds, because it'll take that long for you to have a conversation with someone and actually determine that it is a proper conversion. So if the call only lasts 3 seconds, it's a wrong number, it's spam, you won't count that. So how do we configure that? You can create a conversion action, and you can do it right here, phone calls. This is sort of the easiest thing to do, using call assets or call ads if you're going to have call specific ads. But the other option, the second option, is calls to a number on your website. If you do this, you'll give it a name, website phone calls, specify whether there's a value or not. Do you want to count every phone call from that same session? So if the same person on the same session calls 3 times, is it 1 conversion or is it 3? We'll select 1. And then in this case, what you'll do is you'll put in the number that's typically listed on your website. So we'll actually use this Google number. And then the display number, this is the number that people see on your website exactly as it is displayed. So for example, when someone phones this number, we want Google to track it, but the phone number may not appear exactly like that. It may appear with dots in the middle or something like that. So it's the same number, but Google's asking, how is it actually displayed on your website? Because this helps Google to recognize that number and then dynamically replace it on your website with a Google specific number that operates in the same way. So someone's on a desktop machine, they see that Google specific number, they call it, it will still call your number, the number you specified, but Google will be able to track it and therefore measure it as a conversion. You can specify how long the call you want it to last before it's counted as a conversion. Default 60 seconds, that's probably a good idea. And then the click-through conversion window. So they go to your website, maybe they bookmark it, they come back up to 30 days later, see that same Google number and phone it, that'll still be attributed to that original click. So again, I just leave these in place, leave the defaults. And then create and continue. You still have to configure this conversion in the same way. So, using Google Tag Manager, again, a conversion ID and a conversion label, you would use that in Tag Manager. Then, of course, what you have to do is have a trigger for that. So you have to have that automatically display on your website, but it could just be for every page view. Right? So Google's going to be looking for that phone number displayed on your site, and it's going to try to dynamically replace it with a Google number. So those are the 2 different ways in which you can create a phone call lead, a phone call conversion within Google Ads. Now, the last thing I want to show you is custom goals. So for example, we have here, LA purchases, London purchases, New York purchases. Let's say what we have is we've got several different sections on our site, and if someone makes a purchase and they're from LA, we have an LA specific campaign. So we're targeting people in Los Angeles. We just want to focus on those LA conversions. We're not going to get the London purchases, the New York purchases. It just doesn't make sense. What we can do is we can create a custom goal. So for example, at the bottom, custom goals, we're going to click add custom goals. Now what we can do is we can select which custom goal, which conversion actions do we want to be part of this custom goal. So we'll select LA purchases, and let's say we have a generic contact form. So we just want these 2. And we're going to call this LA conversions, and it's going to use these 2 conversion goals. We'll save it. now we have this custom goal. Let's create another one for the London purchases and the contact forms, and we'll call this London conversions. So now what we can do is under these conversion goals, when we go over to our campaigns, we can specify if we want, and I'll go into the settings for a campaign. And so we just wait for this to load. And so under conversion goals here, we can specify whether we want account default or campaign specific. If we choose account default, any primary conversions that you've configured under your conversion goals will be shown here. So it will automatically optimize and try to get as many of these conversions, whatever you have specified in the account. But if you choose campaign specific, you can change the campaign goals and you can select individual ones, but because we've configured this LA conversions and London conversions, these custom goals, we can just select this one. So if this is an LA campaign, we just want it to focus on the LA conversions, we can do that. And I can save this, and then we can go to the London campaign and we can specify that its goals are just the London conversions. So I hope that that helps you understand how to create and how to manage conversions, including phone calls, as well as create and manage your custom goals.